Girl sees millionaire being attacked by a snake while vultures watch, then she does this. Comment what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The midday sun punished the arid lands of Stone Creek, Arizona, when Theodore Blackwood, 52, parked his pickup truck near the old mining craters. The businessman, owner of the St. Francis Mining Company, had decided to personally inspect the most remote parts of his property after receiving worrying reports about possible trespassers. His leather boots crunched across the rocky ground as he examined the tracks left by unauthorized machinery. Theodore was a meticulous man, accustomed to controlling every detail of his business. Since the loss of his wife, Clara, 3 years ago, he had dedicated himself entirely to work, transforming grief into corporate determination. His graying hair and the wrinkles around his green eyes testified not only to his age, but also to sleepless nights planning strategies to expand the mining company. He walked along a narrow trail between the rocks. Something caught his attention. Small, bare footprints marked the red earth, accompanied by tracks that seemed to indicate someone had recently slept there. Theodore frowned, concerned about the possibility of squatters camping on his land. He decided to follow the tracks to better understand the situation. The terrain became more irregular as he advanced. Small, thorny bushes were scattered among the loose stones, creating a hostile environment for anyone without proper equipment. Theodore was wondering what kind of person could survive in these conditions when he felt a sharp sting in his right leg. The pain was instant and intense. Looking down, he saw a rattlesnake over 3 feet long, slithering away quickly among the stones, leaving only 2 small punctures in his calf as evidence of the attack. The venom began to take effect almost immediately. Theodore felt his legs go weak and his vision blur, desperately trying to reach the cell phone in his shirt pocket. His hands trembled violently as he tried to dial 911, but the device slipped from his fingers and shattered against a rock. Breathing became difficult and he realized he wouldn't make it back to his truck. The businessman, who had always controlled every situation, found himself completely vulnerable in the face of implacable nature. Theodore staggered until he found a scarce patch of shade under a dry tree and lay down, trying to stay conscious. The unforgiving Arizona desert sun intensified his thirst and mental confusion. In his last moments of lucidity, he observed dark shapes circling in the blue sky, vultures that seemed to be patiently awaiting the inevitable outcome. About 200 yards away, a small figure moved among the rocks with surprising agility. Valentina, just 4 years old, carried an old paint can she used to collect anything she could sell or trade for food. Her messy brown hair and dirty clothes contrasted with her bright, intelligent eyes, which missed no movement around her. The girl had learned to survive on the streets of Stone Creek from a very young age. Connie Moreno, the recycler who had found her abandoned 2 years earlier, had taught her the secrets of urban survival. Valentina knew which materials were valuable, where to find usable leftover food, and, most importantly, how to recognize danger. That day, she had ventured farther than usual, following the tracks of an old road that led to the abandoned mines. Connie was working in town and wouldn't be back until late afternoon, leaving Valentina free to explore. The girl had a natural curiosity that led her to discover treasures where others saw only trash. It was then that the cries of the vultures caught her attention. Valentina knew that sound well. It was the same one she heard when an animal got injured or sick at the dump where she sometimes scavenged. Something was wrong. Following her intuition, she headed in the direction of the sounds, easily climbing the rocks that formed small rises in the terrain. From the top of a rock, Valentina saw the scene that would change her life forever. A man in expensive clothes lay unconscious under a tree, while 3 vultures landed closer and closer to him. The girl didn't hesitate for a second. She picked up some stones from the ground and started throwing them at the vultures, yelling with all the force of her small lungs. "Get out of here! Go away!" Valentina screamed, running towards the vultures with a courage that defied her age. The birds, surprised by the child's aggressive reaction, took flight and flew away, circling in the sky before disappearing completely. The girl cautiously approached the unknown man, observing his weak but steady breathing. Theodore was unconscious but still alive. Valentina gently touched his face, noticing that he was very hot and sweating profusely. Although she was just a child, she had witnessed similar situations among the homeless and knew that this man needed urgent help. The girl looked around, searching for any sign of civilization. On the horizon, she could spot the main road where vehicles occasionally passed. Valentina made a brave decision. She would leave the man in the shade and run to the road to get help. Before leaving, she poured the little water she carried in a plastic bottle onto his face in an instinctive attempt to cool him down. The run to the road seemed to last an eternity. Valentina's little legs ached, but she didn't stop once, driven by a determination she couldn't explain. When she finally reached the hot asphalt, the girl began to wave desperately at the few vehicles that passed, most of them speeding by without even slowing down. After nearly an hour of trying, a delivery truck finally stopped. The driver, a middle-aged man named Joe Carter, was surprised to see such a small child alone in that isolated place. Valentina, with her natural communication skills, quickly managed to explain about the injured man in the mines. Joe Carter didn't hesitate to help. He immediately called the paramedics and accompanied Valentina back to where Theodore remained unconscious. When the rescue team arrived 20 minutes later, they found the businessman in critical condition, but with stable, vital signs. Throughout the rescue process, Valentina stayed close, watching every move the paramedics made. She answered questions about how she had found the man, but no one asked for her name or where she came from. In the confusion of the emergency response, the girl simply slipped away and disappeared among the rocks, as if she had never been there. Theodore woke up 3 days later at St. Vincent's Hospital in Stone Creek, with the feeling that he had lost an important part of his life. His memories of the accident were fragmented. He remembered the pain of the bite, the sense of desperation, and the dark shapes circling above him. But there was something else, a presence he couldn't identify, a child's voice echoing in his semi-conscious mind. "Mr. Blackwood, you were very lucky," said Dr. Henry Foster, the doctor in charge of his case. "You got here just in time. A few more minutes and the rattlesnake's venom would have caused irreversible damage. Whoever found you saved your life." Theodore tried to focus on the doctor's words, but his mind was obsessed with finding out who his savior was. "Doctor, who brought me to the hospital? I need to thank them," Theodore asked, struggling to sit up in the hospital bed. His voice was still weak, but the determination in his eyes remained intact. Dr. Foster consulted his notes and explained that it was the paramedics who brought him in, alerted by a truck driver who had been flagged down by a child. "A child? What child?" Theodore insisted, feeling an inexplicable urgency to get more details. The doctor just shrugged, explaining that during emergencies like that, not all details were always recorded. What mattered was that he was alive and recovering well. In the following days, as he recovered in the hospital, Theodore couldn't get the idea out of his head that a child had been crucial to his rescue. He insisted on speaking with Joe Carter, the truck driver, who finally visited the hospital on the 4th day. Joe Carter was a simple man, 58 years old, who transported construction materials around the region. "Mr. Blackwood, it was a very strange situation," Joe Carter reported, removing his worn cap as he spoke. I was coming back from a delivery when I saw that little girl on the side of the road, waving desperately. She couldn't have been more than 4, but she spoke with impressive clarity. She said there was an injured man in the mines who needed help urgently. Theodore listened to every word with growing attention. What did she look like? Do you remember any details? Joe Carter described a small girl with messy brown hair, very simple and dirty clothes, but with extremely bright and intelligent eyes. She had guided him to the spot where Theodore was unconscious and then simply disappeared. The strange thing is that she knew that area very well, the truck driver continued. She moved among the rocks as if it were her backyard. And she had a determination that impressed me. When we got to where you were, she watched everything until the paramedics arrived, then vanished into thin air. During his recovery, Theodore was visited by Arthur Vance, his partner at St. Francis Mining. Arthur was a 45-year-old man, calculating and pragmatic, who had always focused more on the financial aspects of the business while Theodore handled the practical operations. His impeccable appearance, a perpetually well-pressed suit, hair combed back with gel and expensive glasses, contrasted with the simple hospital environment. "Theo, you had me worried," Arthur said, pulling a chair close to the bed. "But more importantly, you made our investors nervous. We have that big contract with Golden Mines Construction to sign next week, and they need guarantees that our operation is stable." Theodore watched his partner with growing irritation. After nearly losing his life, Arthur's only concern was business. "Arthur, I'm alive by a miracle, thanks to a child I haven't been able to identify yet. That's more important than any contract right now." The response made Arthur visibly uncomfortable. "Theo, I understand your gratitude, but we need to stay focused. You got hurt because you were alone in a dangerous area, inspecting land that our employees could have checked. We can't let this affect our credibility in the market," Arthur retorted, his voice taking on a harder tone. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a nurse with Theodore's medication. After she left, the businessman looked intently at his partner. "Arthur, I'm going to find this child and thank her properly. If she saved my life, it's my moral duty to repay her somehow." "Theo, you're being sentimental. A child in the mines was probably there illegally, maybe even involved with land squatters. It wouldn't be wise to get involved in that situation," Arthur argued. But Theodore had already made up his mind. When he was discharged from the hospital a week later, Theodore's first order of business was to return to the place where he had been bitten by the snake. He carefully examined the area, looking for clues about the identity of his savior. He found a few scattered objects, a small, empty paint can, remnants of food wrappers, and small footprints preserved in a puddle of dried mud. Theodore photographed everything with his phone and decided to search the areas near the mines, especially places where a child might find shelter. For 2 days, he explored every corner of the properties, talked to employees, and questioned local residents, but no one had seen a girl like the one Joe Carter described. It was on the 3rd day of his search that he decided to expand his investigation into the town of Stone Creek. Theodore started with the places where vulnerable children often gathered: the bus station, the historic downtown, the municipal market, and the vicinity of the city dump. His meticulous search drew the attention of local merchants. "Are you looking for someone specific, sir?" asked Maria, the owner of a small diner near the bus station. Theodore explained his situation and described the girl he was looking for. Maria thought for a few moments before replying that she sometimes saw children begging in the area, but they appeared and disappeared constantly. Theodore's frustration grew with each day without results. He had hired 2 private investigators, posted flyers around town, and offered a $5,000 reward for anyone who could provide information about the child. Arthur watched all these moves with growing concern, fearing that his partner's obsession would harm the business. "Theo, You're spending too much time and money on this search. Our clients have started asking about your availability for important meetings, Arthur warned during a tense conversation in his office. Besides, this reward story is attracting all sorts of opportunists. And Arthur was right. In the following days, dozens of people showed up claiming to know the child, each with a different story, all clearly fabricated. Theodore interviewed each of them personally, hoping to find some thread of truth, but all the accounts proved to be false or contradictory. During one of these frustrating interviews, Theodore received an unexpected call. It was Joe Carter, the truck driver who had helped with the rescue. "Mr. Blackwood, I think I saw the girl earlier today. I was passing by Oak Street when I noticed a child who looked familiar, collecting recyclables with an older woman." Theodore's heart raced. "Are you sure it was her?" Joe Carter explained that he couldn't be 100% sure, but the girl had very similar features, and most importantly, the same agility and determination he had observed on the day of the rescue. He provided the approximate location where he had seen them. Theodore cancelled all his appointments for the day and drove immediately to Oak Street. It was an area on the outskirts of Stone Creek where low-income families lived in simple houses and makeshift shacks. He parked his car and began to walk through the dirt streets, carefully observing every child he encountered. It was when he turned a corner that he finally saw her. Valentina was crouched next to a dumpster, carefully separating pieces of metal and plastic, while a woman of about 40, thin and with her hair tied in a ponytail, organized the materials into large bags. The girl was wearing the same simple clothes and had the same messy hair described by Joe Carter. Theodore felt his heart pound. After weeks of searching, he had finally found the child who had saved his life. Theodore stood on the corner for several minutes, watching Valentina work alongside Connie Moreno. The girl displayed an impressive efficiency for her age, separating the materials with precision and placing them in the correct bags without needing constant guidance. Her movements were agile and confident, revealing a familiarity with that type of work that contrasted painfully with her young age. Connie Moreno was 38, but looked older due to the marks left by a life of hardship. Her thin face was framed by brown hair dried out by the sun, and her calloused hands testified to years of hard labor. She wore a faded blouse and patched pants, but maintained a dignified posture as she patiently taught Valentina to identify the different types of recyclable materials. "This one is aluminum, Val. It's worth more than the iron," Connie explained, holding up a crushed can. "And this clear plastic is also valuable. Always separate it from the others." Valentina nodded intently, memorizing every piece of information as if it were the most important lesson in the world. Theodore approached slowly, trying not to startle the pair. When he was a few feet away, he cleared his throat gently to get their attention. Connie immediately looked up, her eyes revealing the protective instinct of someone used to facing difficult situations. Valentina also looked toward the well-dressed man, but without showing any recognition. "Excuse me," Theodore said respectfully, removing his hat. "My name is Theodore Blackwood. I'd like to talk to you if possible." Connie instinctively positioned herself between Valentina and the stranger, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. In her experience, rich men rarely approached people like them with good intentions. "What do you want?" Connie asked, her voice firm but cautious. "If it's about us collecting here, we're not doing anything wrong. The trash is public." Theodore held up his hands in a reassuring gesture, noticing the woman's tension. "No, it's not about that. Actually, I believe this little girl saved my life a few weeks ago," Theodore explained, looking affectionately at Valentina. "I was unconscious after being bitten by a snake in the mines, and someone called for help. I've been looking for that person to thank them." Connie frowned, processing the information. She clearly remembered the day Valentina had come home, later than usual, talking excitedly about helping an injured. man. At the time, Connie had thought it was just another of the girl's imaginary stories, but now she began to realize it might be real. "Val, do you remember helping someone in the mines?" Connie asked softly. Valentina nodded vigorously, her eyes lighting up with the memory. "There was a man sleeping, and the vultures wanted to hurt him. I threw rocks at the vultures and called the truckman." Theodore felt an intense emotion upon hearing the confirmation from his savior. He knelt to be at Valentina's eye level, his hands trembling slightly. "You saved my life, little one. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here today." The girl smiled shyly, not fully understanding the magnitude of her actions. Connie watched the interaction with a mixture of pride and worry. She knew Valentina well enough to know the girl was incapable of inventing such a detailed story, but she also knew that rich men like Theodore could have hidden motives for approaching a vulnerable child. "Mr. Theodore, was it? I appreciate you coming here, but now that you've said thank you, you can go. We have work to do," Connie said, trying to end the conversation. Her life experience had taught her to be wary of promises and kindness from people of different social classes. "Please, let me explain," Theodore insisted. "I didn't just come here to say thank you. I want to repay what she did for me. Maybe I can help you in some way." Connie laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "Help how? With money? With promises? I've heard that before, mister." Theodore realized his approach was not being well received, but he didn't give up. "I understand your mistrust, but I'm a man of my word. I own a mining company in the region, and I have the means to offer you both a better life." Connie stood up abruptly, taking Valentina by the hand. "A better life?" Connie repeated with irony. "And what would be the price for this better life? What would you expect in return?" Theodore was surprised by the aggressiveness of the question, but he understood that Connie was protecting Valentina in the only way she knew how. "I expect nothing in return. I just want to repay a debt of gratitude," Theodore answered sincerely. "This child saved my life. It's my moral duty to help them." Connie studied his face for a few seconds, searching for signs of falsehood or ill intent. "You don't know us. You know nothing about our life or our needs," Connie said. "Why should I trust someone who appears out of nowhere offering help?" Theodore understood that he needed a different approach. "You're right, I don't know you," he admitted. "But I'd like to. Can I come back another day? Maybe we can talk more calmly." Connie hesitated, looking at Valentina, who was watching the conversation with growing curiosity. "Uncle, why were you sleeping in the mines?" Valentina asked innocently, making Connie and Theodore smile involuntarily. The question broke some of the tension. Theodore gently explained about the snake accident, simplifying the story so the girl could understand. "You were very brave to help me," Theodore said. "Not all adults would have that courage." Valentina smiled proudly, but her expression soon changed. "I have to take care of the animals when they get hurt. Aunt Connie taught me." Connie's heart tightened when she heard Valentina call her aunt. The girl had started using the term naturally after a few months of living together, and it always moved Connie deeply. She had found Valentina abandoned at the bus station 2 years ago, with only a dirty diaper and crying from hunger. "Mr. Blackwood," Connie said after a pause, "if you really want to thank us, you can make a donation to the community daycare here in the neighborhood. The children there need it more than we do." Theodore shook his head respectfully, but insisted he wanted to do something specific for them. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of other recyclers who knew Connie. They greeted the pair and watched Theodore with curiosity and suspicion. An older man named Antonio approached and asked if there was a problem. "No problem, Antonio," Connie answered quickly. This gentleman was just thanking Val for helping him. Antonio nodded but remained close, clearly ready to intervene if necessary. The community of recyclers had its own code of mutual protection. Theodore realized his presence was causing discomfort and decided to retreat for now. "Connie, can I come back tomorrow? I'd really like to talk more with you when you have time." Connie looked at Valentina, who nodded enthusiastically and reluctantly agreed. "All right, but you don't need to bring anything. Just talk," Connie said. Theodore thanked them and said, "Goodbye," but before he left, he knelt again in front of Valentina. "Thank you again for saving me, little one. You are a very special girl." As he walked back to his car, Theodore felt a mix of joy and concern. He had finally found his savior, but he realized that gaining Connie's trust would be a bigger challenge than he had imagined. The life of that woman and the girl was clearly difficult, but they had a dignity and a bond that impressed him. On the way back to the office, Theodore couldn't stop thinking about Valentina, the girls. Courage in facing the Vultures to save a stranger revealed an exceptional character, and the way Connie protected her showed that despite the hardships, Valentina was being raised with love and solid values. That night, Theodore called Arthur to tell him about the encounter. His partner's reaction was immediately negative. "Theo, you're getting into a dangerous situation. These people might try to take advantage of your gratitude. What if this whole story is a setup to extort money from you?" Arthur's suspicion deeply irritated Theodore. "Arthur, you didn't see the sincerity in that child. She really saved me, and there's nothing fake about it." But Arthur kept insisting that Theodore was being naive and should keep his distance from the situation. After hanging up the phone, Theodore stood looking out the window of his luxurious apartment in downtown Stone Creek. For the first time in years, since Clara's loss, he felt he had found a purpose that went beyond business. That brave little girl had saved not only his life, but perhaps his soul as well. Theodore arrived at the agreed-upon spot the next day, carrying a small backpack with water, cookies, and a few simple toys he had bought. At a shop in the historic downtown, he wanted to show his good intentions without seeming invasive or condescending. Connie and Valentina were already working when he approached, and this time the reception was slightly less hostile. "Good morning," Theodore greeted respectfully. Connie responded with a nod, while Valentina ran to him with a radiant smile. "Uncle, you came back!" the girl exclaimed, making Theodore's heart warm. The natural way she called him uncle moved him deeply. "Of course I came back. I promised, didn't I?" Theodore replied, offering the backpack to Connie. "I brought a few simple things, just a gesture of thanks." Connie hesitated before accepting, but Theodore's gentle insistence and Valentina's obvious curiosity convinced her. When Connie opened the backpack and saw the carefully chosen items, her expression softened slightly. They weren't expensive or extravagant gifts, but practical and appropriate things. Valentina was especially fascinated with a small drawing pad and colored pencils, while Connie thanked him for the water and cookies. "You didn't have to," Connie murmured, but her voice no longer had the harshness of the previous day. "Valentina, what do you say when someone gives you something?" The girl immediately replied with an enthusiastic, "Thank you," already flipping through the blank pages of the notebook. Over the following days, Theodore established a routine of visits. Always in the late afternoon, when the scavenging work was ending, he would show up to talk with the pair. Gradually, Connie began to lower her guard, realizing that Theodore's intentions seemed genuine. It was during one of these conversations that Theodore learned more about their story. Connie told him, with initial reluctance, how she had found Valentina abandoned at the bus station. She was alone, crying, hungry. No one claimed her, no one looked for her. "So I took her home," she explained, stroking the hair of the girl who was playing nearby. "And you've been together ever since?" Theodore asked. Connie nodded, explaining that in the first few months she had tried to find any of Valentina's relatives, but without success. She didn't remember anything. She was too little, and I always wanted a daughter. Connie's honesty touched Theodore deeply. He realized that this woman had made a huge sacrifice by taking on the responsibility of raising Valentina, sharing her poverty, but offering all her love. "You did a beautiful thing," he said sincerely. "Valentina was very lucky to find you." It was then that Connie made a revelation that would completely change the dynamic between them. While Valentina played a few feet away, she took an old, yellowed photo from her pocket. "Mr. Blackwood, I need to show you something," she said, extending the photograph with trembling hands. Theodore took the photo and felt the world spin around him. It was an image of the Blackwood family mansion from 15 years ago, during a Christmas party. Several people were posing in the garden, including himself, his late wife Clara. And, in the right corner of the photo, a young brunette woman in a maid's uniform, whom he immediately recognized as a younger version of Connie. You worked at our house?" Theodore asked, his voice choked with emotion. Connie nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I worked for 2 years as a maid. Mrs. Clara was very good to me. When she passed, I couldn't bear to stay there and I quit." Theodore vaguely remembered Connie, but at the time she was just one of many employees who had passed through the mansion. Now looking at her, he could recognize the features of the shy young woman who cleaned the rooms and helped in the kitchen. The discovery created an unexpected connection between the past and the present. "Why did you never tell me this?" he asked. Connie lowered her eyes, clearly embarrassed. "Because I didn't want you to think I was trying to take advantage of this connection, and because, I always thought you didn't even remember me." The revelation completely changed Theodore's perspective on the situation. Connie was not a stranger who had saved his life through Valentina. She was someone who had served his family, who had known Clara, who was part of his personal history. The coincidence seemed almost impossible, but there was the photographic proof. "Connie," Theodore said softly, "now I understand why I feel so connected to you too. It's as if fate orchestrated all of this." Connie shook her head, still reluctant to accept any notion of fate or special destiny. In the following days, the dynamic between them changed significantly. Theodore began to talk about Clara with Connie, sharing memories that she also possessed. The maid clearly remembered Clara's kindness, how she always treated the staff with respect and gentleness. "Mrs. Clara was special," Connie said during a conversation. "She always asked about my family, if I needed anything. When my mother got sick, she lent me money for the medicine." Theodore smiled sadly, recognizing the generous character of his late wife. It was during this conversation that Arthur showed up unexpectedly at the place where they usually met. His face was red with anger, and he had clearly been looking for Theodore all over town before finding him there. "Theo, I need to talk to you." "Now," he said, completely ignoring Connie and Valentina. "Arthur, I'm busy. We can talk later," Theodore replied, annoyed by his partner's rudeness. But Arthur didn't accept the refusal. "No, Theo, this has gone too far. You're harming our company with this obsession." Connie immediately sensed the tension between the two men and instinctively pulled Valentina close. The girl, feeling the discomfort in the air, clung to Connie's skirt while watching the adults with frightened eyes. "What obsession, Arthur?" Theodore retorted, standing up to face his partner. "I'm just repaying a debt of gratitude." Arthur laughed with contempt, looking disparagingly at Connie and Valentina. "Repaying? Theo, you're being manipulated by this woman." "Watch what you say," Theodore warned, his voice taking on a dangerous tone. Connie also stood up ready to defend her dignity, but Arthur continued his attack. She appears in your life with a convenient story about a child who saved you, and now you find out she used to work in your house. Isn't that too much of a coincidence? Arthur's accusation hit Connie like a slap in the face. She had feared this exact reaction when she decided to show the photograph to Theodore. "Mr. Vance, I never asked for anything from Mr. Blackwood. He was the one who insisted on helping us," she defended herself, but her voice trembled slightly. "Of course you didn't ask directly," Arthur continued cruelly, "but you used this child to get to him, didn't you? You must have planned this from the beginning." Valentina began to cry, frightened by the loud voices and the hostile atmosphere that had settled in. Theodore completely lost his patience. "Arthur, you're being ridiculous and cruel. Connie is an honest woman who is raising this child with great love, despite all the difficulties. If you can't see that, that's your problem." "My problem?" Arthur yelled. "Theo, you've missed 3 important meetings this week because of this situation. Our clients are questioning your professionalism, and now you find out this woman has connections to your family. This is an elaborate scam." The argument attracted the attention of other residents of the neighborhood, who began to approach to see what was happening. Connie felt deeply humiliated at being publicly accused of being a scammer, especially in front of people who knew and respected her. "Enough, Arthur," Theodore said firmly. "You're being disrespectful and you're scaring the girl. If you have a problem with me, we'll solve it at the office." But Arthur wasn't finished. He looked directly at Connie and said, "Ma'am, I suggest you stop deceiving my partner. We know who you really are." It was then that something unexpected happened. Antonio, the oldest recycler who had known Connie for years, approached the group. "What's going on here?" he asked, positioning himself protectively beside Connie. Other recyclers also drew near, creating a subtle but clear barrier between Arthur and the makeshift family. "Nothing that's any of your business," Arthur answered arrogantly. But Antonio didn't back down. "If it involves Connie and little Val, it is my business. This woman is honest and hard-working. I won't have outsiders come here and disrespect her." The situation was escalating dangerously when Theodore made a drastic decision. "Arthur, you're fired," he said in a firm, clear voice. "I don't want you as a partner anymore. I'll buy out your share of the company." The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur turned pale, clearly not expecting such an extreme reaction. "You can't do this, Theo. We have contracts, agreements." But Theodore had already made up his mind. "I can and I will. You've crossed every line today." The consequences of Arthur's dismissal spread through St. Francis Mining like a shockwave. The morning after the confrontation, Theodore arrived at the office to find several anxious employees waiting for an explanation. The news had spread quickly, and many feared for the stability of their jobs. Sandra Martin, Theodore's secretary for 10 years, was the first to approach him. "Mr. Blackwood, is it true that Mr. Vance no longer works here?" she asked nervously. Theodore confirmed the information and called a general meeting to clarify the situation for all employees. During the meeting, Theodore explained that he would be taking over complete management of the company and that all jobs were secure. However, he didn't mention the details of the conflict with Arthur, maintaining a professional version of the facts. What he didn't know was that Arthur had spent the night making strategic calls. Arthur Vance was not the type of man to accept defeat passively. He had built his career through manipulation and control, and Theodore's impulsive decision represented a direct threat to his financial future. During the night, he contacted 3 of the mining company's main clients, planting seeds of doubt about Theodore's mental and professional stability. "Dr. Foster, I need to speak with you about a delicate situation," Arthur said on the phone to the representative from Golden Mines Construction. "Theo has been exhibiting strange behaviors lately. He's making irrational decisions and getting involved with questionable people. I think the snake accident affected him more than we thought. The rumors spread by Arthur began to take effect quickly. On Wednesday, Theodore received 3 calls, cancelling previously scheduled meetings. On Thursday, 2 important contracts were temporarily suspended by clients. By Friday, the situation had become a real crisis. Meanwhile, Connie was facing her own demons. Arthur's public accusation had deeply affected her, awakening old insecurities about her social status and her true motivations for keeping Valentina with her. For 2 straight nights, she barely slept, questioning whether her actions were really as pure as she believed. "Val, would you be happy if you lived in a big house with new toys and food always on the table?" Connie asked one morning, watching the girl play with pieces of cardboard she had turned into a little house. Valentina stopped playing and looked seriously at the woman she considered her mother. "I'm happy here with you, Auntie. Why are you asking that?" Valentina replied with the brutal honesty of small children. "Is Uncle Theo going to take us away?" The girl's question made Connie realize that her own insecurities were affecting Valentina. Theodore, even while facing a professional crisis, did not abandon his daily visits. In fact, the meetings with Connie and Valentina had become his emotional refuge amid the business chaos. It was during one of these visits that he noticed something different in Connie's behavior. "Are you okay? You seem worried," Theodore observed, noticing Connie's dark circles and distant expression. She hesitated before answering, but finally decided to be honest about her feelings. "Mr. Blackwood, I keep thinking about what Mr. Vance said. What if he's right? What if I really am taking advantage of the situation?" Connie's vulnerability deeply touched Theodore. He realized that Arthur's cruel words had planted seeds of doubt in a woman who was already carrying the weight of raising a child alone in difficult conditions. "Connie, look at me," he said firmly. "You saved my life through Valentina. You raised an abandoned child with love and dignity. Nothing Arthur said changes those facts." But Connie's doubts were too deep to be easily dispelled. That night, she made a decision that would shock Theodore. Next morning, when he arrived for his usual visit, he found only Antonio at the spot where they used to meet. "Where are Connie and Valentina?" Theodore asked, a bad feeling growing in his chest. Antonio shook his head sadly. "She left last night, sir. Took the girl and said she was going to look for work in another town. Didn't want to say where." Theodore's despair was immediate and overwhelming. In just a few days, he had lost his partner, seen his business fall into crisis, and now had also lost the 2 people who had become the center of his emotional life. He spent the next 3 days searching for Connie and Valentina in all the neighboring towns, but without success. It was during these frustrating searches that Theodore received a call that would change everything again. It was Dr. Marcus Oliver, a lawyer specializing in corporate law and one of the few true friends he had. "Theo, I need to see you urgently. I have important information about Arthur." They met at Dr. Oliver's office on Tuesday afternoon. The lawyer had conducted a discreet investigation into Arthur's activities after the dismissal and had discovered alarming information. "Theo, Arthur wasn't just spreading rumors about you. He was secretly trying to buy shares of your company through third parties." The revelations came one after another, like an avalanche. Dr. Oliver had discovered that Arthur had been embezzling small amounts from the company for at least 2 years, using fictitious contracts and fake invoices. The total amount was still being calculated, but it was already over $200,000. "How did he manage to do that without me noticing?" Theodore asked, feeling betrayed and naive. Dr. Oliver explained that Arthur had used his position of trust and knowledge of the internal systems to create a sophisticated embezzlement scheme. "But there's more," the lawyer continued. He was planning a bigger coup. He wanted to force you to sell your share of the company to him at a low price, claiming you were mentally unstable after the accident. The revelation of the extent of Arthur's betrayal left Theodore in a state of shock. While Theodore dealt with these devastating discoveries, Connie and Valentina were 200 miles away in the city of Silverwood, living in even more precarious conditions than before. Connie had found work as a cleaner in a school, but the salary barely covered the rent of a small room in a boarding house. Valentina, in turn, was clearly suffering from the move. The girl constantly asked about Theodore and when they would go home. "Auntie, why did we run away from Uncle Theo? Did he do something bad?" she asked repeatedly, not understanding the complex motivations that had led to their flight. "No, my dear, he didn't do anything bad," Connie replied with a heavy heart. "It's just that sometimes it's better not to get used to things that are too good." But even as she spoke, Connie knew her justification sounded weak even to herself. Life in Silverwood was harder than Connie had anticipated. The work was hard, the pay irregular, and they knew few people. Valentina had lost the natural joy that had always characterized her, spending entire days quiet and apathetic. Connie began to question whether her decision to run away had really been to protect Valentina or just to protect her own wounded pride. It was on a rainy Thursday that the situation reached a breaking point. Valentina woke up with a high fever and a sore throat, but Connie had no money to take her to a doctor. The school where she worked would only pay at the end of the week, and they had already spent their last savings on the room's rent. "Auntie, I'm sick," Valentina murmured in a weak voice, her cheeks red with fever. Connie felt despair take over. In Stone Creek, she knew people who could help, places where she could seek free medical assistance. Here, they were completely alone. That same afternoon, while Valentina dozed with a fever, Connie made a difficult decision. She walked to a payphone and, with trembling hands, dialed the number she had memorized but sworn never to use. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Hello?" It was Theodore's voice, heavy with exhaustion and worry. Connie was silent for a few seconds, fighting against her pride and fear. "Mr. Blackwood," she finally said, "I need help. Valentina is sick and I don't know what to do anymore." On the other end of the line, Theodore felt a mix of relief and urgency that almost knocked him over. "Connie, where are you? I'm coming to get you right now." Through tears, Connie gave the address of the boarding house in Silverwood and apologized for running away. "You don't need to apologize," Theodore said firmly. "Just hang in there. I'll be there in 2 hours." As he ran to his car, Theodore felt that there was finally a chance to reunite the makeshift family that had become so important to him. But he didn't yet know that the problems were just beginning. The 2-hour drive to Silverwood seemed to last an eternity for Theodore. He drove at the maximum speed limit, his fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel as he thought of a sick Valentina and a desperate Connie. The whole way, he blamed himself for not realizing sooner how much his words and actions had pressured Connie into making drastic decisions. When he finally arrived at the indicated address, Theodore was shocked by the conditions of the place. The boarding house was a dilapidated building in a poor neighborhood of the city, with broken windows and peeling walls. The smell of dampness and mold permeated the air, and he immediately understood why Valentina had fallen ill so quickly in that environment. Connie was waiting for him at the entrance, her face reflecting a mixture of shame and relief. She had visibly lost weight in the 2 weeks of absence, and her clothes were even more worn than before. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you for coming," she said in a choked voice, avoiding looking him directly in the eyes. "How is Valentina?" Theodore asked immediately, following Connie up the narrow, foul-smelling stairs that led to the second floor. "The fever has gone down a bit, but she's very weak. She hasn't been able to eat anything for 2 days, Connie replied, opening the door to a tiny room that barely fit a single bed and an old chair. Valentina was lying on the bed, wrapped in a thin blanket, her eyes closed and her breathing irregular. When she heard Theodore's voice, she slowly opened her eyes and a faint smile appeared on her pale face. "Uncle Theo," she murmured in a hoarse voice, "you came to get me." Theodore's heart broke seeing the girl's condition. He knelt beside the bed and gently placed his hand on her forehead, feeling the high temperature. "Of course I came, little one. We're going to take care of you now," he said gently, then turned to Connie with determination. "We need to take her to the hospital. Immediately." Connie's initial resistance was immediate. "Mr. Blackwood, we don't have money for a private hospital, and at the public one we'll wait for hours in line." Theodore shook his head firmly. "Don't worry about money. We're going to the best hospital in the city right now." During the drive to Silverwood Regional Hospital, Valentina dozed in Connie's lap in the back seat of Theodore's car. The girl was clearly debilitated, and her breathing worried both adults. Theodore drove with extra care, trying to avoid bumps that might disturb her further. At the hospital, Theodore used his influence and resources to ensure immediate attention. Dr. Carla Santana, the pediatrician on duty, examined Valentina carefully and diagnosed a severe respiratory infection, likely caused by the unsanitary conditions of the boarding house. "The child is dehydrated and needs to be admitted for intravenous antibiotics," the doctor explained. Connie was devastated to hear the diagnosis. "It was my fault," she murmured, tears streaming down her face. "I brought her to this horrible place out of pride, out of fear. Now she's suffering because of my stupid decisions." Theodore gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Connie, now is not the time to blame yourself. Valentina needs us to be strong for her," he said firmly. "And when she gets better, we'll talk about the future calmly." During the 3 days of hospitalization, Theodore and Connie took turns at Valentina's bedside, monitoring her slow but steady recovery. It was during these long hours at the hospital that Connie finally opened up completely about her fears and insecurities. "Mr. Blackwood, I always knew I couldn't offer Valentina the good life she deserves," she confessed one early morning. "But she's all I have. She's my reason for living." Theodore listened patiently as Connie revealed her deepest worries. She feared that by accepting his help, she was giving up her independence, and worse, that one day Theodore might decide Valentina would be better off without her. "I have no education, no money, nothing to offer her," Connie said. "Connie," Theodore replied after a long pause, "you have love, and that's more important than anything I can offer." He then made a proposal that would change everything. "What if we became a family? I'm not talking about marriage or anything like that. I'm talking about joining forces to give Valentina the best life possible." The initial proposal left Connie confused and suspicious. "What do you mean, a family?" Theodore explained his idea carefully. He would buy a large house in Stone Creek where the 3 of them could live together, each with their own privacy but united by their care for Valentina. Connie would officially be the girl's adoptive mother, but with all the necessary support. "And what would my role be in this?" Connie asked. "Would I be like a glorified maid?" Theodore shook his head vehemently. "No, you would be a partner. You would handle Valentina's emotional and educational aspects, and I would provide the material, resources, but all important decisions would be made together." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Carla, who brought good news about Valentina's recovery. "The infection is under control, and she can be discharged tomorrow, but it's important that you provide a healthy environment for her," the doctor warned, looking significantly at the precarious conditions she had observed upon admission. The next day, while Valentina rested in the hospital room, Theodore and Connie continued to discuss the proposal. Connie had spent the night thinking and had come to a conclusion. "Mr. Blackwood, I accept your proposal, but with conditions," she said firmly. "What conditions?" he asked, prepared to negotiate anything. Connie took a deep breath before answering. "First condition, I want to work. I will not be supported by charity. Second, all decisions about Valentina are made jointly, but if there's a disagreement, my word prevails, because I am her mother. Third, if one day you get tired of this situation, you can't just abandon us. You must ensure that Valentina will be safe." Theodore was impressed by Connie's maturity and determination. Her conditions were fair and showed that she had thought carefully about all aspects of the situation. "I accept all your conditions," he said, "but I have a counter-proposal regarding the job." "What counter-proposal?" Theodore explained that his company was facing difficulties after Arthur's departure and that he needed someone trustworthy to reorganize the files and internal administration. "You already know the company, you know my way of working. You would be perfect for the position of administrative manager." Connie was surprised by the offer. "Mr. Blackwood, I don't have the training for a position like that." Theodore smiled. "You have something better. Honesty and dedication. The rest can be learned. And it wouldn't be a favor, it would be a real need for the company." When Valentina was discharged the next day, she was visibly better, but still weak. During the trip back to Stone Creek, she asked several times if they would return to the horrible boarding house. "No, my dear," Connie replied. "We're going to a new house, where you'll have your own room and a yard to play in." "With Uncle Theo?" Valentina asked hopefully. "With Uncle Theo," Connie confirmed, looking in the rearview mirror to see the genuine smile that lit up the girl's face for the first time in weeks. However, as they returned to Stone Creek planning their future together, unknown forces were already working against them. Arthur had used the 2 weeks of Theodore's absence to intensify his attacks on his former partner's reputation. He had spread even more damaging rumors about Theodore's mental state, suggesting that he was being manipulated by a con artist. Worse still, Arthur had contacted an old acquaintance who worked at Child Protective Services in Stone Creek, planting doubts about the suitability of a single and mentally unstable man to care for a child. Without Theodore's knowledge, a discreet investigation into his personal life was already underway. When they arrived in Stone Creek, they found their first unpleasant surprise. An officer from Child Protective Services was waiting at the door of Theodore's office with a summons to appear at a hearing regarding Valentina's situation. The document alleged anonymous complaints about inadequate housing and care of the minor. Connie turned pale as she read the summons. "What does this mean?" she asked in a trembling voice. Theodore tried to remain calm, but internally he was furious. He knew exactly who had made the complaint. "It means Arthur isn't finished trying to destroy us," he said, with controlled anger. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, and they would have to prove that Valentina was being properly cared for. But there was a problem. Technically, Connie did not have legal guardianship of the girl, since she had found her abandoned without ever formalizing the adoption. Legally, Valentina was considered a minor in an irregular situation. That night, while Valentina slept in the hotel room where they were temporarily staying, Connie and Theodore faced the possibility that the girl could be removed from their care and placed in a state shelter. "I won't let that happen," Theodore vowed. "We'll fight with all our strength." But even as they made plans to defend themselves at the hearing, neither of them knew that Arthur had prepared one last devastating surprise that would test the limits of their determination to protect Valentina. The preparation for the hearing consumed the entire following week. Dr. Marcus Oliver had offered to represent Theodore and Connie pro bono, recognizing the injustice of the situation. He spent days collecting documents, witnesses, and evidence to prove that Valentina was being properly cared for and that the allegations were unfounded. "We need to show emotional, financial, and family stability," Dr. Oliver explained during a preparatory meeting. "Child Protective Services will primarily question Connie's irregular status as Valentina's guardian, and they'll use the rumors about your mental health, Theo, to suggest you don't offer a suitable environment." Connie was visibly nervous as the hearing approached. She had spent the last few nights barely sleeping, imagining scenarios where Valentina would be taken to a state shelter. "Dr. Oliver, what's the real chance of us losing her?" she asked with a trembling voice. "To be honest, the situation is delicate," the lawyer admitted. "You don't have legal guardianship documents, and there are formal complaints questioning the adequacy of your care. But we have positive points. Valentina is clearly healthy and happy. You show genuine love for her, and we have community witnesses who can attest to your character. During this week of preparation, something unexpected happened. Valentina, who had fully recovered from her respiratory infection, began to display behaviors that none of the adults had observed before. She started to frequently converse with animals she found around the city, from stray cats to birds, and the animals seemed to respond unusually to her presence. "Aunt Connie, the corner cat, is hungry," Valentina said one morning after spending a few minutes crouched next to a thin cat that lived near the hotel. "He told me he hasn't eaten in 2 days." Connie smiled, thinking it was a child's imagination, until she checked and saw the cat did indeed look malnourished. The phenomenon repeated several times throughout the week. Valentina identified a dog with an injured paw before any adult noticed the problem, warned about a bird's nest that was about to fall from a tree, and even managed to calm a nervous horse that was frightening people in the town square. "This is strange," Theodore commented to Connie one night. "It's like she has a special connection with animals." Connie agreed, remembering how Valentina had managed to scare away the vultures the day she saved Theodore. Maybe that hadn't been just luck. The discovery of Valentina's special ability gave Dr. Oliver a new perspective on how to approach the hearing. "This could work in our favor," he said. "It shows that Valentina is a special child, with unique sensitivities that you understand and nurture. It could be a positive differentiator." Meanwhile, Arthur intensified his final attacks. He had found out about Valentina's hospitalization and was using that information to suggest negligence on the part of Connie and Theodore. Furthermore, he had contacted disgruntled former employees of the mining company, offering money in exchange for negative testimonials about Theodore's character. "Mr. Vance, I can't lie about the boss," said Carlos Silva, a former company driver who had been fired for theft a few years earlier. "Mr. Blackwood was always fair to me." But Arthur was persistent. "I'm not asking you to lie, Carlos. I just want you to share your concerns about his recent behavior." Arthur managed to convince 2 ex-employees to give testimony questioning Theodore's emotional stability after the snake accident. Both had been fired for just cause, but this was not mentioned in their reports to CPS. On the eve of the hearing, a new bomb exploded in Theodore's life. He received a call from his accountant informing him of a surprise tax audit at the company. "Theo, they're questioning several transactions from the last 2 years, the accountant explained nervously. "It seems someone provided specific information about possible irregularities." Theodore knew immediately that Arthur was behind the audit. His ex-partner was using his inside knowledge of the company to create tax problems that could result in heavy fines and questions about Theodore's integrity as a businessman. "Dr. Oliver, could this affect tomorrow's hearing?" Theodore asked worriedly. The lawyer confirmed that tax problems could be used as evidence of financial and administrative instability, hurting their chances of keeping Valentina in their care. That night, Connie found Valentina awake in the middle of the night, looking out the hotel window. "What's wrong, my dear? Can't you sleep?" The girl turned to her with an expression far too serious for her age. "Auntie, they're going to try to take me in from you tomorrow, aren't they?" Valentina asked with a clarity that surprised Connie. "I heard you talking to the doctor." Connie knelt beside the bed, not knowing how to explain the situation to a 4-year-old. "Val, some people think you would be better off somewhere else," Connie said carefully, "but Uncle Theo and I are going to fight to stay with you because we love you very much." Valentina nodded gravely, as if she understood the seriousness of the situation. "If they take me, will you look for me?" Valentina asked. Connie felt tears burning her eyes. "Always, my dear. I will always look for you." That night, Valentina slept in bed with Connie, clinging to the woman she considered her true mother. On the day of the hearing, they arrived at the Child Protective Services building at 8 in the morning. The building was simple and functional, with hallways painted a light green and the characteristic smell of institutional disinfectant. Valentina held tightly to Connie's and Theodore's hands, her big eyes observing everything around her with nervous curiosity. The caseworker in charge was Dr. Regina Souza, a 50-year-old woman with 20 years of experience in child protection. She had carefully reviewed all the documentation and prepared for a hearing that could define a child's future. "Good morning, everyone," Dr. Souza said as she entered the hearing room. "We are here to discuss the situation of the minor, Valentina, who is under the informal care of Ms. Connie Moreno." She looked directly at Valentina. "And you must be Valentina. Would you like to sit here next to me?" Valentina looked to Connie for approval before approaching the caseworker. "Don't be afraid," Dr. Souza said gently. "I just want to talk to you for a little bit." For the next 15 minutes, she asked simple questions about Valentina's life, her feelings towards Connie and Theodore, and her general well-being. Valentina's answers were clear and consistent. She spoke of the love she felt for her Aunt Connie, how Uncle Theo made her feel safe, and how happy she was living with them. When asked where she would like to live, she answered without hesitation, "With my family." After talking with Valentina, Dr. Souza called the witnesses. Antonio was the first to speak, describing how he had seen Connie care for Valentina with dedication and love for 2 years. "Ma'am, I know many families in this neighborhood, and I can assure you that girl has never been treated with so much affection," he said emotionally. Dr. Henry Foster, the doctor who had treated Theodore after the snake bite, also gave favorable testimony. Mr. Blackwood demonstrated great emotional maturity throughout his recovery process. "The allegations of mental instability do not align with what I observed professionally." However, when it was time for the opposing testimonies, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. The 2 ex-employees bribed by Arthur gave devastating testimonies about changes in Theodore's behavior, claiming he had become erratic and obsessive after the accident. "He would abandon important meetings to look for this child," one of them said. "He spent company money on private investigators. It was like he'd lost his mind." The second employee corroborated the allegations, adding convincing details about supposedly questionable business decisions. Connie watched in horror as the testimonies piled up against them. When it was her turn to defend herself, her voice trembled slightly. "Dr. Souza, I know I don't have a formal education or financial resources, but I love Valentina more than my own life. She changed my existence for the better." Theodore, in turn, spoke about how finding Valentina had given him a new purpose in life. "I lost my wife 3 years ago and was just existing. Valentina saved me as much as I intend to save her." It's not obsession, it's paternal love. When the hearing ended, Dr. Souza announced that she would need 48 hours to analyze all the evidence and make a decision. During this period, Valentina will remain in temporary care at a neutral location, she said, causing immediate panic in Connie and Theodore. Please, don't separate me from her now, Connie begged, but the decision was already made. Valentina would be taken to a temporary foster home while the final decision was made. As a social worker approached to take the girl, Valentina ran to Connie and Theodore. I don't want to go. I want to stay with you, she cried, clinging to Connie's skirt with force. The scene broke the hearts of everyone present, but the rules had to be followed. As Valentina was gently separated from her caregivers, she yelled one last thing that made everyone stop. I saved Uncle Theo from the vultures because the animals told me he was good. They never lie. The comment about her special ability with animals echoed in the silent room, leaving Dr. Souza with a thoughtful expression that would give the case a new direction. The next 48 hours were the most torturous of Connie's and Theodore's lives. Valentina had been taken to the St. Clara's shelter, a well-run institution that couldn't offer the individual affection a 4-year-old child needed. During this period, they were only allowed to visit her once, under strict supervision. The visit was devastating. Valentina was clearly traumatized by the separation, refusing to eat and spending hours looking out the window, waiting for Connie and Theodore to come get her. When are you taking me home? She asked repeatedly, not understanding why she had been separated from the only people she considered family. Soon, my dear, Connie would reply, struggling not to cry in front of the girl. We just need to sort some things out, and we'll be together again soon. Theodore remained silent, watching how Valentina had lost the natural sparkle in her eyes in just 2 days. Meanwhile, Dr. Souza was conducting her own investigations. Valentina's comment about the animals had piqued her professional curiosity. In her 20 years of experience, she had learned that young children often revealed important truths in seemingly innocent ways. She decided to personally visit the places where Valentina had lived with Connie, talking to neighbors and local merchants. What she discovered surprised her. All the accounts were consistent. Connie was a dedicated and loving mother, and Valentina was a happy and well-cared-for child, despite the financial limitations. Ma'am, that girl is special, said Maria from the diner. She has a way with animals I've never seen before. One time she calmed down a mean dog that was scaring everyone on the street. It was like they were really talking. Other merchants confirmed similar stories. Dr. Souza's investigation deepened when she spoke with Dr. Foster about Theodore's rescue. The doctor had kept the paramedics' report, which specifically mentioned how a small child had scared off vultures that were threatening the unconscious businessman. It's unusual behavior for a 4-year-old, he observed. It shows rare courage and protective instinct. While Dr. Souza investigated, Arthur was preparing his final blow. He had found out about the tax audit on Theodore's company and was pressuring the auditors to speed up the process. His goal was to create a financial crisis that would definitively prove Theodore's unsuitability as a guardian for a child. Mr. Vance, we've found some irregularities in the accounts, the head auditor reported in a phone call. Nothing that proves bad faith, but there are discrepancies that need to be clarified. Arthur insisted that the discrepancies be interpreted in the worst possible way, even offering extra payment for their services. On the morning of the second day, something unexpected happened at the shelter. Valentina, who had refused to leave her room since her arrival, finally went down to the institution's small yard. There, she found a cat that had appeared during the night, clearly injured and scared. "Kitty, you're hurt," Valentina murmured, carefully approaching the animal. To the surprise of all the staff watching, the cat let the girl touch it, purring softly as she gently examined its injured paw. "You need help," she said, picking the animal up. Sister Carmelita, the director of the shelter, was impressed by the scene. In 40 years of caring for children, she had rarely seen such a natural connection between a child and an injured animal. "Valentina, how did you know the kitty was hurt?" she asked gently. "He told me," Valentina replied naturally, stroking the cat, which remained calm in her small arms. "He said he fell from a high wall and his paw hurt a lot." Sister Carmelita watched intently as Valentina continued to talk to the animal, as if she truly understood its needs. The scene was so striking that Sister Carmelita decided to call Dr. Souza. "Doctor, you need to see this in person. This child has a special gift I have never witnessed before." The caseworker decided to visit the shelter immediately, curious to observe Valentina in action. When Dr. Souza arrived, she found Valentina sitting in the yard with 3 animals around her: the injured cat, a dog that had appeared that morning, and 2 birds perched on her shoulders. The girl was talking softly to each of them, as if she were translating between different languages. "Valentina, can you tell me what these animals are saying?" Dr. Souza asked, sitting next to the girl. Valentina looked at her seriously. "The kitty is in pain, but he's getting better. The doggy is looking for his home, and the birdies want me to tell you that I'm happy with my family." The answer made Dr. Souza completely rethink her assessment of the case. During her career, she had learned to recognize when a child was genuinely connected to people who loved them. The deep sadness in Valentina's eyes since her separation from Connie and Theodore contrasted sharply with the joy she showed when she spoke of her chosen family. That afternoon, Dr. Souza made a decision that would change the course of the process. She called an extraordinary hearing, summoning not only Connie and Theodore, but also several additional witnesses she had discovered during her personal investigations. After further investigation, Dr. Souza announced at the extraordinary hearing, "I have found significant evidence that the complaints against the petitioners were motivated by personal revenge, not by genuine concern for the child's well-being." She then presented documents proving the link between the complaints and Arthur Vance. The revelation caused a stir in the room. Dr. Oliver had managed to trace the phone calls Arthur had made to CPS, as well as the payments he had offered to the false witnesses. "We have here a clear case of misuse of the child protection system for personal revenge," the lawyer declared. But the real twist came when Dr. Souza called an unexpected witness, Dr. Edward Martin, a veterinarian and researcher from the University of Arizona specializing in animal communication. He had been contacted by Sister Carmelita to assess Valentina's unusual situation. "In my 15 years of research," said Dr. Martin, "I have rarely encountered such a genuine connection between a child and various animals. Valentina demonstrates a natural sensitivity that suggests a nurturing environment based on love, protection, and respect for life." He explained that such sensitivity only develops in children who feel completely safe and loved. "Furthermore," the veterinarian continued, "I observed that animals respond to Valentina in a way that indicates absolute trust. This only happens when the child carries no trauma from abandonment or mistreatment." His professional analysis provided scientific evidence of Valentina's emotional well-being under the care of Connie and Theodore. During the hearing, the results of the investigation into the tax irregularities at Theodore's company were also presented. The accountant had discovered that all the discrepancies had been caused by manipulations made by Arthur before his dismissal in an attempt to create future problems for his ex-partner. "Mr. Blackwood," said Dr. Souza, "the evidence clearly shows that the allegations against your integrity were fabricated. Your company is not only in order, but it also demonstrates consistent growth and social responsibility. She had personally verified the community projects that the mining company supported in the region. Connie was called to give one last testimony. With a firm and emotional voice, she spoke about the 2 years she had spent raising Valentina. "Doctor, I know I can't offer her material luxuries, but I can offer unconditional love and total dedication. Valentina taught me how to be a mother, and I intend to be her mother forever." Theodore was also called to explain his feelings about the situation. "Dr. Souza, I lost my wife 3 years ago and was just surviving until I met Valentina and Connie. They gave me back the ability to love and to have a family. I'm not trying to buy a child or satisfy a whim. I'm trying to protect a family that formed naturally through love." As the hearing neared its end, Dr. Souza asked a direct question to both of them. "If I decide to allow Valentina to remain with you, how do you intend to formalize this situation legally?" Theodore and Connie looked at each other before Connie answered. "Doctor, I would like to officially adopt Valentina as my daughter," Connie said, "and Mr. Blackwood would be like an official godfather, someone who supports us and participates in the important decisions about her future." Theodore nodded vigorously, confirming that he agreed with this family structure. The proposal demonstrated maturity and careful planning. Dr. Souza was impressed with how they had thought about the legal and emotional aspects of the situation. "Very well, I will make my final decision now," she announced. After a complete analysis of all the evidence, direct observation of the child, and investigation of the complaints, Dr. Souza said solemnly, "I determined that Valentina will remain in the care of Connie Moreno with the support of Theodore Blackwood. Furthermore, I authorize the immediate commencement of the legal adoption process." Connie's and Theodore's relief was so intense that they both started crying simultaneously. Dr. Oliver smiled with satisfaction, knowing that justice had prevailed. But the greatest joy would come when they could pick up Valentina from the shelter and finally reunite their unconventional but genuinely loving family. However, as they celebrated their victory at the hearing, none of them knew that Arthur had not given up. Completely, humiliated publicly and facing possible legal consequences for his actions, he was planning one last attempt at revenge that would once again test the strength of the bonds that held that unlikely family together. The reunion of Valentina with Connie and Theodore at the shelter was a moment of pure emotion. When the girl saw the two of them approaching, she ran towards them with a joy that infected all the staff present. "My family came back!" she shouted, hugging Connie first and then Theodore, as if to make sure they were both real. "We will never be separated again," Connie promised, kneeling to be at Valentina's eye level. "Now we are a real family forever." The words were spoken with such conviction that even Sister Carmelita was moved as she witnessed the reunion. In the following days, they began a new routine. Theodore had temporarily rented a larger house on the outskirts of Stone Creek while he looked for the ideal property to buy. The house had 3 bedrooms, a small yard, and, most importantly, enough space for each of them to have their privacy without losing the sense of a united family. Connie officially took on the role of administrative manager at St. Francis Mining, surprising everyone with her natural organizational skills and dedication to her work. "She has a natural talent for administration," Sandra Martin commented to Theodore. In 1 week, she organized files that had been messy for years. The job gave Connie not only financial independence, but also renewed self-esteem. For the first time in her adult life, she had a respected job, a decent salary, and the possibility of planning a stable future for Valentina. "Uncle Theo, Aunt Connie is happier now," Valentina observed one afternoon, demonstrating her keen perception of adult emotions Valentina also adapted quickly to the new routine. She attended a community daycare in the mornings, where her special ability with animals soon caught the attention of her teachers. She managed to befriend the school's rabbit that no one could touch, reported her teacher, Maria Jose. It's like she understands exactly what the little animals need. However, the tranquility of their new family life was shaken when Connie began to show worrying symptoms. At first, it was just persistent headaches and excessive fatigue, which she attributed to the stress of the past few months. But when the pain intensified, and she started having dizzy spells, Theodore insisted that she see a doctor. "Connie, you haven't been well for a week," Theodore said worriedly. "Let's go to the hospital and run some tests." Connie initially resisted, fearing that any health problem could affect Valentina's adoption process, but his insistence and Valentina's obvious concern convinced her. The medical exams revealed something devastating. Dr. Robert Asher, an oncologist at the regional hospital, requested a private conversation with Connie after analyzing the CT scan results. "Ms. Moreno, I need to be direct with you. We found a mass in your brain that suggests a malignant tumor." Connie's world collapsed in that moment. Her first concerns were not for herself, but for Valentina. "Doctor, how much time do I have?" she asked in a controlled voice, already thinking about how to organize the girl's future. "And is there a possibility of treatment?" Dr. Asher explained that the tumor was in an advanced stage, but that there were treatment options that could significantly prolong her life. "With chemotherapy and radiotherapy, we can talk about months, maybe years, but I won't lie, it's a tough fight." Connie processed the information in silence, her mind already drawing up plans to protect Valentina. When she left the doctor's office, she found Theodore and Valentina in the waiting room. The girl was drawing in her notebook, creating colorful animal figures, while Theodore watched her with paternal affection. The scene touched Connie deeply as she realized how essential those two had become to each other. "Connie, what did the doctor say?" Theodore asked, immediately noticing the pallor on her face. Connie looked at Valentina, who remained focused on her drawings, and made a discreet gesture for Theodore to follow her to a more private area of the clinic. "Theo, I need to talk to you about something very serious," she said, struggling to maintain her composure. "The doctor found a tumor in my brain. It's serious." The revelation hit Theodore like a lightning bolt, leaving him momentarily speechless. "But there's treatment, right? We'll find the best doctors, the best hospitals," he said desperately, already picturing how he would use all his resources to save Connie. "Money is not an issue. We'll do whatever is necessary." Connie gently held his hands. "Theo, I'll accept any available treatment, but I need you to promise me one thing. If something happens to me, take care of Valentina as if she were your own daughter." The conversation was too painful, but necessary. "Nothing is going to happen to you," Theodore insisted. "And even if it did, Valentina would always have a home with me. But let's focus on getting you better first." At that moment, they were interrupted by Valentina, who had approached silently. "Aunt Connie, are you sick?" the girl asked with her big eyes full of concern. Young children had an impressive ability to sense when something was wrong with the adults they loved. "Is that why you're sad?" Connie knelt to be at Valentina's level, deciding to be honest within the appropriate limits for a 4-year-old. "Yes, my dear, I'm a little sick, but the doctors are going to help me get better, and Uncle Theo will take care of both of us during the treatment." In the following weeks, the family dynamic changed drastically. Connie began an aggressive chemotherapy treatment that left her extremely weak. Theodore took on many of the household responsibilities, learning to cook simple dishes, comb Valentina's hair, and handle the daily needs of a young child. "Uncle Theo, you don't know how to braid," Valentina laughed, one morning, watching his clumsy efforts to fix her hair. "Aunt Connie does it better." Theodore smiled sadly. realizing how fundamental Connie had become in the girl's life in ways he was only beginning to understand. Valentina, for her part, showed impressive maturity for her age. She helped Connie during her moments of weakness, bringing her water, arranging pillows, and even talking softly to her during the bouts of nausea caused by chemotherapy. "Aunt Connie, the little birds outside said you're going to get well," Valentina said one afternoon, sitting beside the bed where Connie was resting. "They never lie about important things." Connie smiled, touched by the girl's innocence and hope. It was during this difficult period that an unexpected discovery brought a new perspective to the family's financial situation. While organizing Connie's old documents for the adoption process, Theodore found a land deed that she had inherited from her parents and completely forgotten about. "Connie, did you know you own a 5-hectare plot of land in the countryside?" Theodore asked. Examining the legal document, Connie looked at the deed in surprise. "My parents left that for me, but I always thought it was just wilderness. I never imagined it could have any value." Theodore, with his mining experience, decided to investigate the property personally. What he discovered there completely surprised him. Connie's land was located in an area with strong indications of mineral deposits, specifically quartz and amethyst, which were highly valued in the regional market. "Connie, this land could be worth a lot of money," Theodore said emotionally. "With proper exploration, you would have the resources to afford any medical treatment anywhere in the world." The discovery represented not only financial independence for Connie, but also security for Valentina's future. However, the revelation about the land's value created an ethical dilemma for Theodore. He knew that some locals might question his motives, suggesting that he was approaching Connie for financial gain. "Theo, I want you to be my partner in exploring this land," Connie said. "Without you, I would never have known it had value." The partnership proposal put Theodore in a delicate position. On one hand, he genuinely wanted to help Connie and Valentina. On the other, he knew that accepting the partnership could raise suspicions about his true intentions. "Connie, I can't accept this. It would be taking advantage of your vulnerable situation." "Theo," Connie said firmly, "you've saved our lives in so many ways we can't even count. If I don't survive this illness, I want Valentina to have financial security, and if I do survive, I want to have the resources to give her everything she deserves. Accept this partnership as a favor to us both." It was at this moment of family negotiation that Arthur reappeared in their lives. He had found out about Connie's illness through contacts at the hospital and saw a final opportunity to harm Theodore. Arthur began to spread rumors that Theodore was taking advantage of a sick woman's vulnerable condition to gain access to her properties. "Have you seen how he showed up in her life right when he found out she had land with ore?" Arthur would comment in bars and local businesses. "What a convenient coincidence." The rumors began to circulate around town, creating a new source of stress for the family, which was already facing enough challenges. The situation became even more complicated when people started openly questioning Theodore's motives. Some merchants who once greeted him cordially now treated him with coldness. "Mr. Blackwood, I hope your intentions with Connie are honest," Maria from the diner said one morning. That night, while Valentina slept and Connie rested after a particularly difficult chemotherapy session, Theodore found himself questioning his own motives. Was he unconsciously being influenced by the financial value of the discovery? Was his dedication to the family as pure as he believed? The rumors spread by Arthur began to deeply affect the family's life. Connie noticed the changes in the treatment they received in town, from suspicious glances to whispered comments when they passed through the streets. The situation became even more complicated when she began to question whether accepting the partnership with Theodore had been the right decision. Theo, maybe we should reconsider our partnership on the land, Connie said one afternoon after a particularly draining chemotherapy session. People are talking, and I don't want you to be harmed because of this. Her hair had started to fall out due to the treatment, and she wore a colorful scarf that Valentina had chosen for her. Connie, we're not going to make decisions based on gossip, Theodore responded firmly. If you want my help to develop the land, it's because you trust me, and I accept because I want to ensure that you and Valentina have financial security, no matter what happens. He had spent sleepless nights thinking about the situation, but his determination to protect the family remained unshakable. The tension in the city escalated when Arthur decided to step up his attacks. He contacted a local journalist offering an interesting story about a businessman taking advantage of a sick woman. "Mark, this could be a great story for your paper," Arthur said on the phone. "A case of exploitation happening right under our noses." Mark Peters, a journalist for the small local paper, the Stone Creek Ledger, was initially reluctant to publish a story based solely on rumors, but Arthur was persistent, providing convincing details about the convenient timing of Theodore and Connie's relationship. Think about it, Mark. A wealthy businessman appears in the life of a poor recycler exactly when she discovers she has valuable land. What a coincidence. Meanwhile, Valentina was facing her own difficulties. At daycare, some children had overheard their parents' comments and started asking embarrassing questions. "Valentina, is it true your uncle wants to steal from your mum?" a 5-year-old classmate asked during recess. The girl was confused and upset, not understanding what it meant. "Aunt Connie, why are people saying bad things about Uncle Theo?" Valentina asked that night. "He's good to me. Why don't they like him?" Connie found herself in a difficult position, trying to explain the complexity of social relationships to a 4-year-old. "My dear, sometimes people make up stories when they don't understand something," Connie explained patiently. "Uncle Theo takes care of us because he loves us, not for any other reason. And we know that, which is what matters." But internally, she was increasingly worried about the impact the situation could have on Valentina's emotional development. The crisis reached its peak when Mark Peters decided to publish the story. The article, titled "Businessman Takes Advantage of Sick Woman," was published in the Tuesday edition of the local paper. Although it didn't name names directly, the details were specific enough for the whole town to identify the people involved. A local businessman is being questioned for his sudden closeness to a family in a vulnerable situation, Theodore read aloud, his voice trembling with anger. Reliable sources suggest the interest is not altruistic, but related to mineral discoveries on the family's properties. The article continued with devastating insinuations about his motivations. The publication of the story had immediate consequences. The mining company's clients began to question Theodore's integrity. Employees felt uncomfortable with the situation, and Connie herself faced looks of pity and judgment whenever she went out for her medical appointments. "Mr. Blackwood, some clients are cancelling contracts," Sandra Martin reported nervously. "They say they don't want to be associated with someone who takes advantage of vulnerable people." The company's financial situation, which had stabilized after Arthur's departure, began to deteriorate again. It was at this critical moment that an unexpected source of support emerged. Dr. Robert Asher, the oncologist, treating Connie, had read the newspaper article and was outraged by the insinuations. He knew of Theodore's dedication to caring for Connie during her treatment and decided to speak out publicly. "As the physician responsible for the treatment of the patient mentioned in the article," Dr. Asher wrote in a letter to the editor, "I can attest that the support she receives is genuine and essential for her recovery. I have rarely seen such family dedication, and it is regrettable that acts of love are distorted by malice." The letter was published in the next edition of the newspaper. Other support began to emerge gradually. Antonio organized a petition among the residents of the neighborhood where Connie had lived, attesting to her character and Theodore's. "We know this family," the document said. "We know the love between them is real, no matter what the envious say." Sister Carmelita from the shelter also spoke out. "I had the opportunity to observe the dynamic between these three people," she declared publicly. "I saw a genuine family love that transcends ties of blood or material interest. Valentina is a loved and cared for child, and that's all that matters." During this tumultuous period, something extraordinary happened. Valentina, who had been quieter than usual due to the stress of the situation, did something that changed many people's perspective. During one of Connie's medical appointments, she approached a group of patients in the waiting room and began to talk to them about her invisible pets. "My kitty said you're going to get better," Valentina said to an elderly woman waiting for chemotherapy. "He knows because animals can feel these things." The girl's innocent conversation deeply touched the other patients, who began to see the child's natural purity and kindness. A nurse who witnessed the scene commented to other hospital staff, "That girl has a special light. It's not possible that she's being raised by self-interested people." The comment spread among the medical team, creating an unexpected support network. Parallel to these developments, Dr. Oliver was discreetly investigating Arthur's actions. The lawyer had discovered that the ex-partner was violating the terms of his severance agreement by actively interfering in Theodore's business. "Theo, we have legal grounds to sue Arthur for defamation and business interference," he reported. "I don't want any more conflicts," Theodore initially replied. "I just want him to stop harming my family." But Dr. Oliver insisted that legal action was necessary to stop Arthur's systematic attacks. "He won't stop voluntarily. He needs real consequences." The situation reached a turning point when Connie had a deep conversation with Theodore one early morning. She had woken up during a bout of nausea from chemotherapy and found Theodore in the kitchen making tea for her without being asked. "Theo, I need to ask you a direct question," Connie said, sitting at the kitchen table. "If I didn't have the land with the minerals, would you still be here taking care of us?" The question was difficult, but she needed the answer for her own peace of mind. Theodore stopped stirring the tea and looked directly into her eyes. "Connie, I didn't even know you had land when I decided I wanted to be part of your lives. I found out about Valentina because she saved my life, and I fell in love with you two as a family long before any financial issue came up." "And what if the treatment doesn't work?" Connie asked, directly facing her deepest fears. "If I can't be cured, will you really take care of Valentina as you promise?" Theodore held her hands. And firmly, "Connie, Valentina is my daughter in my heart. Regardless of what happens to you, to the land, to the company, or to anything else, she will always have a father in me." The sincerity in his voice and eyes convinced Connie completely. That morning, they made a joint decision that would surprise the entire town. Connie would sign a power of attorney temporarily ceding the development of the land to a third-party company, unrelated to Theodore, with the profits being deposited into a trust fund for Valentina. "This way, we remove any doubt about financial motivations," Theodore explained. "And we still guarantee Valentina's future." The decision demonstrated a maturity and transparency that would completely disarm their detractors' arguments. When news of the decision spread through the town, many people began to reconsider their opinions about the family. "Someone who gives up money for love must be truly sincere," commented Maria from the diner, who had become one of the family's staunchest defenders. However, the decision also had an unexpected consequence. Arthur, Realizing that his attacks were failing and that he could face serious legal consequences, decided to try one final desperate approach that would definitively test the strength of the family bonds he had tried to destroy. Arthur's last attempt came from a completely unexpected source. He had contacted a woman named Lucy Santos, who presented herself as Valentina's true biological mother. Lucy was a 22-year-old woman, thin and worn down by a hard life, who claimed to have left her daughter at the Stone Creek bus station 2 years ago due to serious personal problems. "Mr. Vance, I've always regretted abandoning my daughter," Lucy said during a meeting in Arthur's makeshift office, "but I was in no condition to care for her at the time. I'm better now, and I want her back." The story was convincing, especially because she could describe some of Valentina's physical characteristics that matched perfectly. Arthur saw the appearance of Lucy as the perfect opportunity for his final revenge. "Lucy, you have a legal right to your daughter," he said, feigning genuine interest in the child's well-being. "I'll help you file a lawsuit to regain custody. I have lawyers who can work on your case for free." What Arthur didn't reveal to Lucy was that he had paid her a significant amount of money to return to Stone Creek. Through shady contacts, he had tracked down several women who had abandoned children in the region, until he found one who fit the profile and was willing to cooperate in exchange for money. In reality, Lucy Santos was a recovering drug user who had indeed abandoned a child at the bus station 2 years prior. However, she wasn't sure if Valentina was her biological daughter, but the amount offered by Arthur was too tempting to refuse. When the news about the appearance of the biological mother reached Connie, Theodore, and Dr. Oliver, the impact was devastating. "What do you mean her mother showed up?" Connie asked in a trembling voice, feeling as if the floor had disappeared from under her feet. "After 2 years. Right now." Dr. Oliver examined the documents presented by Lucy with professional skepticism. "The documentation is formally correct," he admitted, "but the timing is highly suspicious, and there are inconsistencies in her story that need to be investigated." He had noticed that some dates didn't match official records. Theodore felt a cold anger grow in his chest as he realized this was another of Arthur's maneuvers. "This has his fingerprints all over it," he said with certainty. "It's no coincidence a woman shows up now, just when our family was stabilizing. But regardless of the motivations behind the situation, they would have to face a new legal battle." The news reached Valentina through conversations she overheard between the adults. During dinner, she asked directly, "Aunt Connie, is it true my birth mother came back to get me?" The question broke Connie's heart, who fought back tears. "My dear, a woman has appeared who says she is your biological mother," Connie explained in a controlled voice. "But you know I'm your mother in my heart, right? And Uncle Theo is your daddy in your heart. Nothing will change our love for you." Valentina nodded, but her eyes revealed confusion and fear. "I don't want to go with her," Valentina said firmly. "I want to stay with you. She abandoned me. You saved me." The maturity of her response surprised the adults, but it also made them realize how this situation was emotionally affecting the girl. That night, Valentina had nightmares for the first time in months. She woke up crying, calling for Connie, and saying she had dreamed she was lost and no one could find her. "Aunt Connie, promise. You won't let her take me?" the girl pleaded between sobs. "We will fight with all our strength to stay together," Connie promised, hugging Valentina tightly. "You are my daughter, and I am your mother. No piece of paper can change that." But internally, she was terrified of the possibility of losing the girl who had become her reason for living. The lawsuit filed by Lucy moved forward quickly, with Arthur funding expensive lawyers to represent her. The legal argument was simple. Biological mothers have priority rights over children, regardless of who raised them during the period of abandonment. The law favors family reunification whenever possible, Lucy's lawyer explained during a preliminary hearing. My client went through temporary difficulties, but she is now in a position to properly care for her daughter. He presented documents showing that Lucy had completed a rehabilitation program and had a steady job. Dr. Oliver argued back vigorously. Your Honor, this child was abandoned for 2 years and has built deep emotional bonds with her current caregivers. Removing her now would cause severe psychological trauma. He presented psychological reports showing Valentina's emotional well-being under the care of Connie and Theodore. During this period of legal uncertainty, something unexpected happened. Connie began to show signs of significant improvement in her cancer treatment. The latest scans show a considerable reduction in the tumor, Dr. Asher reported with cautious optimism. The treatment is working better than we expected. The improvement in Connie's health brought a new perspective to the family's situation. If I'm going to be cured, I want to be cured to take care of Valentina, she said with renewed determination. I won't let them separate me from her just when I have a chance to give her a long and full life. Theodore also became more determined than ever. Connie, regardless of what happens in court, Valentina will always be our daughter. If we have to, we'll appeal to higher courts, seek justice in other states, we'll do whatever it takes. His company was recovering financially, giving him the resources for a prolonged legal battle. It was during the preparations for the main hearing that Dr. Oliver made a crucial discovery. Investigating Lucy's past, he found serious inconsistencies in her story. Connie, I've found evidence that she may not be Valentina's real biological mother, the lawyer announced in an urgent meeting. What do you mean? Connie asked, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension. Dr. Oliver explained that he had found hospital records showing that Lucy had given birth to a girl on the alleged date, but the child had been stillborn. She really did lose a daughter, but it wasn't Valentina. The discovery created a new line of investigation. Dr. Oliver managed to gain access to the complete medical records and found definitive evidence that Lucy was lying about being Valentina's biological mother. She was manipulated and paid to make this claim, the lawyer concluded. When confronted with the evidence, Lucy initially tried to maintain the lie but eventually broke down. Mr. Vance promised me a lot of money, she confessed through tears. He said the girl would be better off with me than with those rich people who just wanted to use her. I need the money to stay away from drugs. Lucy's confession was recorded and presented as evidence to the court. The judge in charge of the case, Dr. Henry Almeida, was outraged by the manipulation. This court will not tolerate the fraudulent use of the justice system for personal ends, he declared. All allegations against the minor's current caregivers are hereby dismissed. The legal victory brought immense relief to the family, but it also revealed the extent of the destructive campaign orchestrated by Arthur. He was willing to traumatize an innocent child just to get revenge on me, Theodore said with a mix of anger and sadness. This goes beyond any normal business dispute. With the evidence of judicial fraud in hand, Dr. Oliver was able to press criminal charges against Arthur. He's going to face serious consequences now, the lawyer assured them. Bribery, forgery of documents, judicial fraud, these are serious crimes that can result in prison time. When the news of the case's resolution spread through Stone Creek, the community's reaction was one of massive support for the family. We always knew that family was genuine, commented Maria. It's a shame what they tried to do to them. That night, when they were finally alone at home, Connie, Theodore, and Valentina sat together on the living room couch. Are we a real family forever now? Valentina asked, snuggling between the two adults she loved. Forever, Connie confirmed, kissing the girl's forehead. Nothing and no one can change that. Theodore held them both in his arms, feeling that they had finally overcome all the obstacles that had tried to separate them. However, the peace they felt that night would be interrupted by one final discovery that would completely change their understanding of Valentina's origins and the true connections that bound them as a family. A revelation that was hidden in the old records of the mining company and would bring to light secrets from the past that none of them suspected. 6 months after the resolution of the court case, the family's life had finally found a serene and happy rhythm. Connie was in complete remission from cancer. Her hair had grown back, and her energy had almost fully returned. Theodore had bought a spacious house on the outskirts of Stone Creek, with a large yard where Valentina could play and welcome the animals that were naturally drawn to her special presence. Valentina, now 5 years old, attended a private school where her unique ability with animals was seen as a special gift, not something strange. She had become a radiant, talkative and curious child who spoke with pride about her family to anyone who would listen. "I have the bravest mom and the most caring dad in the world," she would tell her teachers. The mining company had fully recovered from Arthur's attacks, who had been sentenced to 2 years in prison for the crimes he had committed. Theodore had implemented social programs at the company, including a daycare for employees' children and environmental preservation projects that utilized Valentina's special sensitivity to identify areas where wildlife needed protection. It was during a reorganization of the company's old files that Sandra Martin made a discovery that would change everything. She was digitizing documents from the last 15 years when she found a forgotten folder at the back of a cabinet containing old personal records of employees, including information about dependents and beneficiaries. "Mr. Blackwood, I found something that might interest you," Sandra said, entering his office with a curious expression. "They're old employee records, and there's information about the late Mrs. Clara that I didn't know about." She handed him a time-yellowed folder, full of documents dating back 15 years. Theodore took the folder with curiosity, expecting to find perhaps some medical reports or life insurance documents of Clara's. What he found left him completely shocked. Among the papers was a detailed medical report about a fertility treatment Clara had undergone in secret, including information about egg donations to other women. "Clara donated eggs," Theodore murmured to himself, reading and rereading the medical document. According to the records, Clara had participated in an assisted fertilization program in Phoenix, where she donated eggs to several women who couldn't conceive naturally. The program had been kept in absolute secrecy, as was common practice at the time. What made the discovery even more impactful was the date of the donations, exactly 9 months before Valentina's birth. Theodore felt his heart race as he processed the implications of that information. Could it be possible that Valentina was biologically Clara's daughter? That night, Theodore shared the discovery with Connie, carefully showing her all the documents. "Connie, there's a possibility that Valentina is Clara's biological daughter," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "The dates match perfectly, and it would explain why I felt so connected to her from the very first moment." Connie examined the documents carefully, her scientific mind analyzing all the evidence. "Theo, this would explain a lot of things," she said slowly. "Valentina's special intuition, the way she saved you that day, even her ability with animals. Clara always had that same special sensitivity with animals." The revelation brought a complex mix of emotions. On one hand, the possibility that Valentina was biologically Clara's daughter created an even deeper connection between her and Theodore. On the other, it raised difficult questions about how and why the girl had been abandoned at the bus station. "We need to investigate this carefully," Theodore said. "If it's true, Valentina has a right to know about her origins. But we also need to understand how she ended up abandoned, if Clara was her biological mother." Dr. Oliver was contacted to help with the necessary genealogical investigation. Over the following weeks, Dr. Oliver conducted a discreet investigation into the archives of the assisted fertilization program. What he discovered was a tragic story that connected all the dots in a devastating way. The recipient of Clara's eggs had been a 19-year-old woman named Marina Silva, who worked in the region's illegal mines. Marina had managed to get pregnant through the fertilization program, but had faced severe complications during her pregnancy due to the unhealthy working conditions in the illegal mines. She had given birth to Valentina prematurely, but had developed a severe infection that left her unable to care for the child. Marina survived only 6 months after Valentina's birth, Dr. Oliver reported. During that time, she tried to care for the girl alone, but her health was rapidly deteriorating. In her final days, she took Valentina to the bus station and left her there, hoping that someone kind would find her and take care of her. The full story finally made sense. Valentina was biologically Clara's daughter through egg donation, but had been initially raised by Marina, a young woman who worked in the same mines where Theodore almost lost his life. The circle had closed in a way none of them could have imagined. "This means Valentina really is my biological daughter," Theodore said with tears in his eyes. "Clara left a gift for me even after she left this world." The discovery explained the instant connection he had felt with Valentina and why she had risked her life to save him. Connie, far from feeling threatened by the revelation, was deeply moved. "Theo, this is beautiful. Clara knew you would need Valentina as much as she would need you. It's as if she planned everything for you to meet when you needed each other most." The decision of whether or not to tell Valentina the truth was carefully considered. Dr. Edward Martin, the veterinarian who had become a family friend, offered an interesting perspective. "Valentina has always known instinctively that you were her true family," he said. "Maybe she doesn't need scientific confirmation of what her heart already knows." Finally, they decided to tell Valentina in a way that was appropriate for her age. "Val, do you remember when we told you about Mommy Clara, Daddy Theo's wife who was in heaven?" Connie began gently. Valentina nodded, remembering the stories they had shared about Clara. "We discovered something very special," Theodore continued, kneeling beside the girl. "Mommy Clara left a very special gift before she went to heaven. She helped you be born, which means you are my daughter by blood and by heart at the same time." Valentina processed the information with the seriousness she always showed for important matters. "Does that mean Mommy Clara is my mommy in heaven, Aunt Connie is my mommy on earth, and you are my real daddy?" Valentina asked, trying to organize the relationships in her young mind. "And you all love me very much?" When she received confirmation from all sides, she smiled radiantly. "Then I'm the luckiest girl in the world." The revelation about Valentina's true origins brought a sense of completeness to the family that had been formed through extraordinary circumstances. Theodore finally understood why he had felt so compelled to find and protect Valentina. She was literally part of his biological family, a gift left by Clara. Connie felt honored to have been chosen by fate to care for the biological daughter of the man she loved as a partner and friend. "Clara knew I would take good care of her daughter," she said one night, looking out the window at Valentina playing in the yard with a group of rabbits that had appeared that afternoon. "And she knew Valentina would save me from an empty life," Theodore replied, hugging Connie from behind. "Clara was always wise like that. Even after she was gone, she found a way to give us a family. They watched Valentina chat animatedly with the animals, her crystal-clear laughter echoing through the sunset-lit yard. That night, as they were putting Valentina to bed, the girl made a statement that perfectly summarized the extraordinary journey they had all lived together. "Daddy Theo, Mommy Connie, I think Mommy Clara in heaven is very happy because she managed to make us a real family." Connie and Theodore looked at each other over Valentina's bed, both thinking the same thing. Through a series of seemingly impossible events, a snake bite, a brave child, an egg donation made in secret 15 years earlier, and the love of a woman who didn't hesitate to adopt an abandoned child, they had become exactly what they were always meant to be, a family. As Valentina fell asleep, surrounded by the love of her parents, small noises came from the yard. It was the sound of nocturnal animals that always felt safe near the special girl who could understand their language. It was the sound of a life in harmony, of a family that had found its place in the world through love, courage, and a series of small miracles that added up to create something extraordinary and eternal. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.